Yeah.
No, they were little, I mean, they weren't,
Right.
it was like this, and it was a rotary thing.
Okay. We're live. And let's do it. So welcome everyone to the January 2025 edition of OUTspoken, the Publishing Triangle's monthly reading series, which we've been hosting here at the Bureau for over a year. Time is a messy thing. My name is Greg Newton. I am the co-founder, along with my partner Donnie Jokum, of the Bureau of General Services Queer Division, which is the space you are in right now. And we started this project in 2012 on the Lower East Side, and we've been here at the LGBT Community Center since 2014. We have regular bookstore hours Wednesdays through Sundays from 1 to 7 p.m. And then we often stay open later when we have events such as this. So if you're not on our email list yet and you'd like to be, you can sign up for that at the register, or if you're watching online on our website, BGSQD, 5 letters that are all around you. And you'll get an email every other Monday about our many upcoming events. And that is it. I'm going to read donations. I'm really good at this. So as an all-volunteer organization, we are dependent on sales and donations to keep this machine going. So I'm going to pass a bag around, and there's some change in here. If you're able to give something, great. If you'd rather support us by buying a book, that's a great thing to do. We have books by some of the authors reading tonight. So you'd be supporting both of us. And I'll pass this around. There's also a Venmo QR if you'd like to give that way. And anyone watching online, if you want to give on Venmo, can do so at BGSQD. You can fight over it. Before I bring Rob up from the Publishing Triangle, I wanted to read a land acknowledgement. So the Bureau acknowledges that our organization operates on the unceded land of the Munsee Lenape. We encourage you to join the Bureau in signing up to make a monthly donation to the American Indian Community House's Mannahatta Fund. The Mannahatta Fund, according to its website, is an invitation to all settlers and non-native people who wish to acknowledge the legacy of theft and genocide that comprise the history of New York City and the United States. And you can find out more at mannahattafund.org. And with that, please give a warm welcome to Rob Burns from the Publishing Triangle.
Thank you, Greg. First time I've ever done this. Thank you, Greg and Donnie. Before we get going, first of all, I want to say we have a great lineup tonight. Unfortunately, one of our writers, Sue Winterhan, is not able to join us tonight. I will have him back. But we have 9 amazing writers. 6 of them are right here in the room with me. 3 more coming in from various locations around the U.S. I will tell you where they are when we get to them. I just want to, before we get going, I want to reinforce what Greg said, that the Bureau of General Services Queer Division is a nonprofit. Your books you purchase here are taxed, but your donations to the Bureau are not taxed. So consider that as a charitable, for your charitable giving. And also, I'd also like to encourage people to become members of the Publishing Triangle. We do everything. We have no staff. We have no office. The board does everything on a volunteer basis, and your support, your $40 membership each year is appreciated and valued. And speaking of the board, let me also make mention the 2 board members are here in the room right now. Carol Rosenfeld, our chair. Hello, Carol. And Gerard Cabrera, who's also a member of the board. Gerard. And just a heads up, we will get details later, but Gerard has been working very diligently in putting together some Spanish language readings with prominent LGBTQ plus Latino writers. So stay tuned for that. So anyway, let's get going with the program. I would first like to welcome up Donna Minkowitz. Donna's new novel, Donnaville, was just published by Indolent Books. Matilda Bernstein's Sycamore said of it, tender and grotesque, Donnaville shocks the senses to open the gates between myth and belonging. Minkowitz is also the author of the memoirs Ferocious Romance, which won a Lambda Literary Award, and Growing Up a Golem, which was a finalist for a Lammy and for the Judy Graham Nonfiction Award given by the Publishing Triangle. Please welcome back, actually, Donna Minkowitz.
Well, hi, everybody. Can someone help me lower the mic? I can never figure this out. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming out on this cold night. Thanks very much to the Publishing Triangle for organizing this series, and to the Bureau for having us. So I'm going to read from Donnaville, which is my new novel. It's set in the city of my brain, so not quite all, but almost all the characters are parts of me. In many ways, this is a novel about being a lesbian who's scared of feminine nurturing and female love, which is a curious position in which to find oneself. So in the part I'm going to read from, there was a character called Magna, which stands for Magna Mater. Any Latin scholars in the room, or classicists, will know that's the great mother from ancient Roman religion. She's also called the Divine Mother in the book. She exists both inside me and outside me, so she is a part of me, even though she also exists outside of me. And then there will be an I character, Donna, who is me. So first, here's the goddess, Magna. Magna is still in bed in the middle of the morning, looking down on Donnaville from the lovely fortress from which she flies down into Donna's city whenever she wishes. She luxuriates with a cup of coffee steamed in the Italian manner, laying her beautiful honey-colored curls back on the cushions. A coal-black sheep walking on its hind legs, one of the many animals that care for her, brings the goddess a sweet roll, butter, and honeycomb. No one has ever been able to make the Divine Mother feel ashamed about anything she takes into her body. She may have whatever she wants whenever she wants it. She also can wake exactly when or if she feels like it, or else delight in the wildest and most unabashed dreams the world has known. However, though she adores indolence with a sweet, spicy, burning little passion, she also loves working. And strangely, Magna has just one thing in common with the jailer, her creation. The jailer is another character. She believes in duty. Therefore, though she needn't do anything by a specific time, a small sigh escapes her lips finally as she gets to her feet, opens the huge arched window across from her bed, and feeling a little foolish, gets into her special singing posture. She stands in a strong stance, her big feet planted, one slightly in front of the other, so her core muscles can support her lungs, her throat, her heart, and her voice when she begins crooning down into Donnaville. But most unlike her, she hasn't even begun her habitual chant when frustration overtakes her, and for a few seconds, she's so fucking grumpy that she can't even open her mouth. Why is it always like this? She sings to Donna every single morning and it never ever works. Is she doing it wrong? Should she be singing something else? Should she be doing something else, not singing? She can normally do everything, so why can't she do this? Frowning slightly, she steps up to the open window, still alive with the most luscious sunlight, and begins her song. Down in Donnaville, 100 miles down from the nurturing mother's fortress in the sky, I, Donna, sit outside at a bird shit-laden plastic blue picnic table. I'm looking north toward the river and savagely but half-heartedly ripping wax out of my ears. It goes like this: rip, sign pause, rip, sign pause. Hey, I don't mean to gross you out. It isn't earwax, medical name cerumen, I'm prying out of my lugs, but high-end delicate beeswax. More than 50 years ago, I got hold of a large cake of the stuff, tore it into tiny bits, rolled them between my hands, heated and softened to bits before stuffing them in my very small attached ears. People are always surprised by how tiny my ears are even as an adult. My body as a whole is small, but my ears are ultra petite. It's understandable I'm terrific at not hearing things that scare me. Of course, I needed to put a thick coating of beeswax in there just to make sure. Still, I'm ambivalent, but the time has come. I'm sick of this shit. I deserve something better. I want a parent inside me who is warmly loving, whose greatest wish is to give me tender care. Not one who smacks me in the head and keeps smacking me. I want the nurturing mother to incarnate herself in me right now. Oh, come to me, goddess. I'm not exactly your type, I know, and Donneville isn't exactly your temple, but please come to me here right now, underneath this apple tree in my yard. We can listen to the creek together, glugging away in the background. So even though I'm not holding my breath for this to work, I sit at the table and scratch at the beeswax, layer by layer, bit by scented bit, and tear the stuff out of my ears that I wedged up in there years ago because it was so perilous to hear that molten gold voice. The goddess sings, "Oh, my Donna, my darling, I want to rub your shoulders. Oh, lay down, lay your head down on my breast. I want to feed you. I have the food right here, a tuna fish sandwich and a meatball one. And I have roses for you, so you will always know how wonderful you are. My delight, my little cookie, my bright animal, my brave girl full of fire. And I will spread around you all that you might ever have needed, all you might ever love, baby." By this point, I can smell her perfume and almost see the long silk scarf she wears, the color of saffron. She has almost incarnated here on the picnic table across from me, and as her form wavers in the noontime light, I feel drunk and terrified at the same time. Her satiny dress underneath the table barely touches my leg. "I will never leave you," she says loudly, warm hand heavy on my shoulder, and I turn away, squinching my eyes toward the neighbor's house, and whisper very low inside my own head, "Please." Her nipple enters my mouth, bright red. It pops inside. I have never felt anything so heavenly, but what I mutter in the direction of the neighbor's house is, "Please, I cannot bear your betrayal." And stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Before I bring up our next reader, I want to note, and I'll actually tell you more about this later in the program, but I want to note that we have a lot of events coming up over the next few months. And the best way you can keep on top of what we've got coming up and who's going to be involved in those programs is, you're going to do things. Hey, it's that easy. I thought it was more complicated. I'm really kind of stupid, by the way. The best way you can stay on top is by getting our monthly newsletters, and we will be letting you know all the programming that's coming up. The one thing I want to get out of the way though first is that a week from tomorrow, Saturday, February 1st, we'll be right back in this building, not in the Bureau, but in, I think, room 101 in the LGBT Center on West 13th Street in Manhattan, in case you, for those of you at home, for a tribute to the late Nikki Giovanni. The Publishing Triangle board member and well-known activist and poet Emmanuel Xavier will be hosting the evening, and we will have readers including Cheryl Boyce Taylor, Harmonica Sunbeam, Daryl Alejandro Holness, Samia Bashir, Ugaba, J.P. Howard, and Reginald Harris. This is going to be a really great event. I'm going to read some more for you later. But please plan on joining us live and in person or streamed. We're still looking for the person that's going to be streaming it, but because we'll get there, we're competent. So please do plan on joining us. It starts at 6 p.m. and it's going to be an amazing, memorable event. Our next reader, beauty about putting this together and really kind of doing it by the seat of my pants is that none of the readers know what order they're coming in, so they're just going to be, it's going to be as suspenseful for them as it is for you. Our next reader is Michael Thomas Ford. Michael Thomas Ford, by the way, along with Carson Tate, who's also here tonight, and they're responsible for me going to my first opera last night, Tosca at the Met.
He stayed awake the whole time.
It took me 66 years to do it, but I did it. I'm showing some culture. Michael Thomas Ford is the author of numerous books, including Lily, Suicide Notes, Jane Bites Back, What We Remember, and Love and Other Curses. Under the name Isabel Bird, he wrote the 15-book Circle of Three series, and he's been a finalist for the Shirley Jackson and the Little, wait, what were you saying?
Where do you find this shit?
Well,
Who doesn't know about this?
off your website. For finals for the Shirley Jackson and Bram Stoker Awards, and he's also won 5 Lambda Literary Awards. At all? I think it's more than that, right?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think we shared a few.
Mike lives in rural Ohio with his partner and 2 rescue dogs. Things he likes include tarot cards, scuba diving, coffee, making a mess in the kitchen, Eurovision, creepy clown films, Christmas ornaments, 80s pop music, Doctor Who, and tattoos. And to finalize what I stole off his website, he also does not like to shave. I got you there, brother. Please welcome Michael Thomas Ford.
I do not like to shave, and I suffered a trauma last week because I had grown my beard down to about here. And I was very pleased with myself because my husband hated it. And I went to get it trimmed up because I'm like, I'm going to New York, I should look, whatever. And I can't see without my glasses. So he's like, oh, I'm just gonna trim the sides here. So I put my glasses back on, and he has shaved the mustache off, but left this goat thing, like literally like a goat. And then he did this weird thing to the sides, and I was like, I did not ask for the Amish special. And so I went home, and I didn't even talk to my husband. He's like, how was? I'm like, not now. And I went upstairs, and it was like, everything down to a 3. So anyway, it's always fun coming here because it's like a time warp for me, because I lived in New York in 1989 to 1994. And then I come in here and I see people I haven't seen since then. And you probably don't remember this, but you and I worked for a magazine called QW together 100 years ago. And then you, sir, I've not seen since the night you won your Lammy. And Dale and I were saying we haven't seen each other since like 13 years. So this is fun. Anyway, I write a lot about teenagers. I write a lot of young adult stuff, and I write adult stuff. And I'm really fascinated by that age range because it seems to be when it was the most dramatic and whatnot. So I was asked to write a short story for an anthology, which is called Don't Ask, Ghosts Tell. And it's a benefit anthology for the Modern Military Association of America. It will be published by, oh God, I forgot the name, Tundra Swan Press, I think is the name of it, and edited by Cira Medeiros and Vince Liagano. And Vince said, I want you to write about teenagers. And my husband, who is younger than I am, is very into D&D. And he happened to be having his D&D group over, and I was listening to them talk, and I remembered being a teenager and D&D was just becoming a thing and how fraught with peril this was. So I wrote a story about a boy, and it's set on Halloween night, and something spooky happens to him, but you don't get to hear that part. You're gonna hear the part that leads up to that. So these boys, this group of friends is playing D&D. So in the center of the chamber, there's a dais. A what? Said Brad. A platform, Morris explained, made out of stone. There are 3 steps at the front and a statue on top. The statue is carved out of black rock of some kind. A statue of what? Brad asked impatiently. Who's the dungeon master here? Said Morris. Brad huffed and shook a handful of bottle caps from the box straight into his mouth. He chewed loudly while Morris, ignoring him, continued. The statue is about 4 feet tall, he said, humanoid, but not quite. A dwarf, said Brad. No. Short horns protrude from the figure's forehead, said Morris. A horned dwarf, Brad said. Or maybe some kind of fawn. Does it have hooves or feet? Shh, Charlie admonished. He liked Brad well enough, but the constant eruptions were taking him out of the game. Hoofs, said Morris, and its eyes are gems, red ones. Rubies, Brad said excitedly. Now you're talking, finally, some treasure. What do you want to do? Morris asked. I take my knife and pry out one of the eyes, Brad said. It's not your turn, said Morris. Todd goes first. Brad groaned. Todd's gonna write a song about it, or a poem. Fucking bards, man. Charlie looked at Todd, who was seated across the table from him. Unlike Brad, who was every bit the stereotypical high school football jock, Todd was more of a quiet observer. Where Brad rushed into every situation ready to act first and think later, Todd asked questions and worked through every possibility before making a choice. This temple is where the cult of the sea demon made sacrifices, Todd said. We know that from the story the barkeep at the inn told us. But that statue isn't big enough to be the demon. They would have made that bigger and more impressive. My guess is this one's a distraction and the real statue is going to be in a hidden chamber. We need to figure out where the entrance to that is and blah, 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 Brad interrupted. Stop talking and do something. He took a swig from his can of Dr. Pepper. I think I want to search for do something, Brad belched. Todd leaned back in his chair. Okay, he said, I'm going to stand and watch while while Stone Nads the fighter over there pries a gem out of the statue and gets himself killed, probably by poison gas that comes out of the eye socket. Brad raised a fist in triumph. You heard the bard, he said. Okay, which eye do you take first? Morris asked. Does it matter? Morris nodded. Fine, the right one. I pry it out. That'll buy me some nice new armor when we head back to town, or maybe a night with a halfling wench at the Crowing Cock. Morris winced and not at the crude joke. Okay. Moments after you remove the right eye, a huge block of stone falls from the vaulted ceiling. It lands on, he looked at Todd, Sweet Song the Bard. Sorry, man. Shit, said Brad. He's dead? The block weighs half a ton, you idiot. Yeah, he's dead. Todd closed his eyes but said nothing. Wait a minute, Charlie said. Can't I heal him? Right, said Brad. That. He can use a resurrection spell. I saw it in the booklet. That's a 5th level spell, Morris said. He's only a 3rd level cleric. Just let him do the healing thing, Brad argued. Morris shook his head. If we don't play by the rules, we might as well just make up anything. Why'd the trap kill Todd and not me? Asked Brad. That's not fair. Because the sea demon is about sacrifice, Morris explained, and chaos. The trap is meant to kill one of the companions of anyone dumb enough to fall for it, to teach them a lesson. If you'd pick the left eye, Charlie would be dead. You're the dungeon master, Brad said. It's your story, so this is your fault. I thought Todd would talk some sense into you, Morris objected, and he tried. Even you should know a statue with gems for eyes is obviously a trigger for a trap. The two of them argued about who was to blame for Todd's death. Charlie blocked them out, focusing his attention on Todd. Todd still hadn't moved or looked at any of them. Watching him, Charlie felt his heartbeat accelerate. His breath caught in his chest, and the sound of Morris and Brad's voices became a roar in his ears. Don't think about Ed, he told himself. Don't think about that. But now all he could think about was Ed, his brother. Ed, in the story he told Charlie about finding his best friend, Ham, wounded on the ground following an ambush by the Viet Cong. Ed had done his best to save Ham, but there was nothing he could do for him. Charlie had heard the story so many times that he could see it play in his head like a movie. In the year Ed was home after being discharged, he'd spent time with almost nobody but Charlie. Holed up in the cabin their family owned out at the lake, he tried to piece his life back together. First with the pills the doctors gave him, and then with the ones he bought himself from guys downtown. Each time Charlie went to see him, he looked less and less like a living man and more like the ghost of one. On New Year's Eve of 1973, he finally became a ghost, wading into the lake and swimming out until he sank beneath the surface. Charlie, there when the divers pulled the body out a few days later, would never forget the paleness of his brother's skin or the deadness of his eyes. Many times he tried to put himself in Ed's position, imagined himself in a jungle thousands of miles from home and safety, holding a friend while the life drained out of him and into the dirt of Vietnam. Now, in a small way, he understood. Todd's bard was fictional, and Todd himself still sat across the table from Charlie, his heart beating very much alive. But the feeling of helplessness in Charlie's soul was very real. And if what he felt was even a tiny fragment of what his brother had felt, he understood a little better the choices that Ed had made. He stood up. I have to go. He pounded up the basement stairs. Behind him, Brad called out, "It's just a stupid game, man." Charlie nodded brusquely at Morris's mother as he passed through her kitchen and went out the side door onto the carport. He hopped on his bike, which was leaning against the wall, and pedaled away. The cool October air brushed his face as he rode, calming him a little, but only a little. His heart still rattled in his chest, and not just from the effort of riding. The truth, which he'd revealed to no one, including himself, was that Todd was more to him than a traveling companion in an adventure game, more than just one of his group of friends. Although he had yet to put a name to these feelings, he nevertheless knew something inside of him had changed during the time that they'd been playing. Unlike Brad, who acted without thinking, Todd reacted thoughtfully to every encounter, considered the consequences of his actions, treated even fictional characters and creatures as if these interactions had real-world implications. Watching this had stirred something inside of Charlie. Todd possessed an awareness of others, a kindness that Charlie longed for, particularly now that Ed was gone. His friends knew about Ed, of course, at least about his death. That it was self-inflicted remained a secret that Charlie shared with no one. Not even his parents talked about it, preferring to let people believe that Ed had simply drowned, that it was all an accident. When conversation around them touched on the topic of the increasingly common issue of returning soldiers taking their own lives, his parents only shook their heads and said, "What a shame." Charlie was fairly certain that they had convinced even themselves that Ed hadn't chosen to leave them voluntarily. When he reached his house, he stowed his bike in the garage and went inside, where he discovered that the telephone on the table in the front hall was ringing. He picked up the receiver. "Hello?" "Hey," said Tom's voice. "Oh, hey," Charlie said. Sorry about before. I don't know why I got so upset. Brad's right. It's just a game." "It's okay," Todd assured him. "I get it. Sweet Song was a great character, but I'll make a new one. And Brad feels really bad about causing my untimely demise, so he's paying for all of us to go see Jaws tonight. Dinner at Mickey D's first, too. You coming?" Charlie almost said no. He was still embarrassed by how he'd overreacted, especially since explaining why he had done so would make things so much worse. Besides, they'd seen Jaws at least 3 times since it came out. But not going would make his friends think he was still upset, and going would mean spending time with Todd. "Sure," he said. "See you in a couple hours." And it goes on from there, and it gets really spooky, so when it comes out, you should buy it, because all of the proceeds from the book are going to help queer military folks. So, thank you.
Michael Thomas Ford, thank you, Michael. It's the 3rd time Mike's been back this, by the way. I should add that people that are here in the audience and those of you watching from the comfort of your own home, and those that will watch in the future, because these are all archived on the Bureau's YouTube channel. We are always looking for people to read. And so please do email us, and this is also where you can find out how to get our newsletter and to become a member too. You can email us at publishingtriangle@gmail.com. We have several email addresses, but that's the one that's easiest for me to access. If you're interested in reading, whether you are in an advanced stage of your career or whether you are just starting in the business, we'd love to hear your voice. And if you have recommendations for people you want to, for those of you out there who are editors or publishers, if you have recommendations for people you want to read, also let us know. So and you'll be hearing, by the way, I'm going to read you a laundry list of people that have signed up to read for the next couple of months. So it's pretty exciting. But before we get to that, let's get to our next reader. 2-time Lambda Award-winning author Georgia Beers has written more than 40 novels of sapphic romance. She resides in upstate New York with her animals and is currently holed up in her warm house, probably under a blanket. She strongly believes in the beauty of an excellent glass of wine, a good scary movie, and the unconditional love of a dog. Fall is her very favorite season. She's currently hard at work on her next book. You can visit and find out more about her at www.georgiabeers.com or search her on Patreon. I should add too, I hope I'm not giving away anything. We come from the same upstate New York community. We have never actually met in person. But maybe one of these days, because, I can take or leave the dog, but I can definitely join you for an excellent glass of wine, Georgia.
I will take you up on that, Rob.
Welcome, Georgia Beers.
Thank you so much. I'm going to read to you from my upcoming romance novel, which is called Whisk Me Away. It is about, actually, this is my 40th novel. So when I thought about that today, I was a little bit blown away, honestly, that I've been doing this for so long. So Whisk Me Away is about two rival pastry chefs, Ava and Reagan. They have a history and they do not like each other, enemies to lovers. But they've both been accepted to the prestigious Bennett Schmidt baking retreat at the home of world-renowned pastry chef Liza Bennett Schmidt. She has 6 female pastry chefs. They spend 8 weeks living in Liza's secluded mansion and learning from the best. And despite their distasteful history, Ava and Reagan have wound up rooming in the same bedroom because, of course, they have. Welcome to romance. In this scene, they've just found out, it's very early in the morning, and they've just found out that Liza's latest assignment for them, discovered via a note slid under the bedroom doors of each pair of chefs, is to make an amazing tiered cake for a same-sex wedding as a 2-person team. So Ava and Reagan have to work together. Neither of them is happy about that. Ava watched as Reagan grabbed her phone and headed out of the bedroom. Ugh, that woman. Ava had to consciously unclench her jaw so that she wouldn't get a headache. Stress did that to her, and Reagan was giving her some stress, it was true. She would never say anything, but losing to Reagan in air hockey the night before was still niggling at her. She'd expected to win. She hadn't been prepared for Reagan to be that good. Who the hell else under 40 was good at air hockey? Stifled the groan of frustration because she didn't lose well. She knew this about herself, which was the only reason she was able to school her expression afterwards and be gracious. Inside, she'd been seething that she lost, to Reagan, of all people. Before she could dwell any longer, there was a soft knock on the door. Who in the world was visiting at 6 a.m? She crossed the room and opened the door to find Maya and Vienna standing there. "Are you guys up?" Maya whispered, craning her neck to look around Ava. "We're up." Reagan went for a walk. Maya held up an envelope. It was identical to the one Ava and Reagan had received. "Did you see this?" Another nod. "We got one too." "What are you guys going to make?" Maya asked, and Vienna gave her a light smack. "You can't ask them that." "Why not?" Maya's voice held a slight whine. "They have an unfair advantage with Reagan being gay." "What?" Ava asked. "How?" She didn't add that she was gay too, because she was far too curious about this so-called advantage it gave her. "Do you think she's better at rainbows?" Vienna rolled her lips in behind Maya, clearly trying not to laugh at her pastry partner. "What? No, that's silly. It's just..." Maya seemed to fumble for her words, then tugged at the ever-present purple bandana around her neck. "I don't know, it just seems unfair." Vienna's laugh was throaty as she began to pull Maya away. "Let's go before you dig yourself a hole you can't get out of." Behind her, Vienna met Ava's eyes, and they both laughed, and she tugged her roommate away. Ava grinned and shook her head as she closed the door. She returned to her desk, where she'd been about to jot some notes on ideas when Reagan returned. "Short walk," she commented. "Rain. Bummer." Ava hadn't even glanced out the window, so had no idea it was wet out. She watched Reagan as she took off her sneakers, crawled onto her bed, and sat back against her headboard. "So we had a couple of visitors," she told her. Reagan furrowed her brow. "At 6 a.m? Ava nodded with a grin. "Yep, Maya and Vienna came to see if we'd gotten an envelope too." "Ah, I see." Also, Maya thinks we have an unfair advantage because you're gay. Reagan's snorted laugh somehow gave Ava whatever it was she needed to say the next words. I didn't have the heart to tell her I'm gay too. I was afraid her head might explode. Reagan's bark of a laugh was so quick and so loud it made Ava jump in her seat. The two of them laughed for a moment before Reagan pushed to her feet and grabbed some clothes out of her wreck of a suitcase still open on the floor. The rain made me cold. I'm going to shower and think about how we can use our gayness to make a better gay cake. As she walked past Ava's desk, she pointed at her with a grin. I knew it, by the way. I knew you were. Then she closed the bathroom door behind her, and Ava kept smiling. The rain that had arrived that morning slowly became angry and morphed into storms, complete with thunder and lightning. And while Ava couldn't speak for Reagan, she was glad to be able to just stay in their room and work on design ideas. She'd never liked thunderstorms. They frightened her, which she knew was silly and childish, but she'd never been able to shake it. As if to underline her thought, a loud crack of thunder shook the house, and Ava nearly jumped out of her skin. You okay? Reagan asked from where she sat on her bed across the room, laptop open, seemingly unaffected by the crashing of the clouds above them. Ava nodded, and she needed a moment to swallow her heart back down out of her throat and into her chest. Thunder's not my favorite. She grimaced as she glanced out the window, bracing for the next crack. You're welcome to come sit here with me. I promise I won't bite or say something assholish. Reagan shot her a look that was half grin, half grimace. Plus, we're both working on the same thing. Might make it easier. She kind of let that idea drift off, then made a show of scooting over on her bed. Ava glanced around the room. Reagan's bed was quite a ways further from the window than Ava's desk, and they were working on the same thing, namely their idea for the pride cake. With a quiet sigh and one nod, she picked up her laptop, pen, and notepad and moved to sit next to Reagan on her bed. As if making their anger about her move known, the clouds crashed together again, and this time the lights flickered. Ava flinched, a quiet gasp escaping her lips. And then Reagan's warm hand was on her thigh. It's okay, she said softly. I'm right here. No worries. The combination of embarrassment for being such a baby and arousal from Reagan's hand on her body annoyed her. But she found herself giving Reagan an explanation anyway. When I was a kid, I was 12 actually, there was a night when my dad didn't come home. It wasn't unusual. He was a drinker and a womanizer and verbally, emotionally abusive, but my mom always did her best to keep him out of trouble. So that night, the bar he normally frequented called my mom and told her to come get him because he was being unruly. She left me home alone in case it got ugly, and it did. Apparently, he got in a fight and he was arrested, and Mom had to follow him to the police station, and it was a whole thing. She ended up being gone for hours. During a thunderstorm, Reagan guessed. Ava nodded. During a raging thunderstorm that knocked out the electricity and the phone. So I was alone in the dark, expecting my parents home in a few minutes that became several hours with no way to contact them. At 12, Reagan's eyes were wide. Yikes, I'm so sorry. You must have been really scared. I hid in my closet the whole time. Oh, you poor thing. And I wet my pants. Oh, God, that's horrible. I'm so sorry. Ava turned her head to meet Reagan's gaze and saw nothing but sympathy there. At the same time, it was as if she'd been in some kind of a trance and had just snapped back to reality. She covered her eyes. Jesus, I don't know why I felt like I needed to tell you all that. She felt the red crawling up her neck and settling into her cheeks, the hot shame making itself known. Reagan squeezed her leg once, then removed her hand, as if sensing the touch was no longer welcome. Hey, like I said, no worries. I'm a vault. She turned an imaginary key in front of her closed lips and mimed tossing it over her shoulder. Then she pointed at her laptop screen. Want to focus on this instead? Grateful, Ava nodded, and they got to work. The next rumble of thunder was loud, but didn't seem quite as nerve-wracking. But she wouldn't let herself dwell on the fact that maybe it was because Reagan was so close. Nope, not dwelling. At all. Thank you.
Thank you, Georgia. I gotta say, by the way, these sessions we've been having have been gaining larger crowds every month, and for a Friday night, you've done good. We have about 30 people out there, which is and Lord knows we have a lot of people that have tuned in on YouTube. So Good stuff. Good going, everybody. Sean Stewart Ruff is the author of the soon-to-be-released novel Days Running. His soon-to-be-released novel Days Running, the 2008 Lambda Literary Debut Fiction Award winner Finlater, and the editor of the landmark Go the Way Your Blood Beats, an anthology of lesbian and gay fiction by African American writers. Please welcome Sean Stewart Ruff.
Give me a second here. Hello, everyone. Good to see you. Good to be here. This book of mine that's coming out is about a teen that I wrote about in my first novel. And in this book, he is about to launch himself into the world, and he has the misfortune of being attacked and beaten up. So this novel isn't about that, but about what he does after that. We pick up with this excerpt. He is about to get together with his boyfriend, Chip, and they're about to enjoy their fuck Sunday. That's what they call their Sunday gatherings. And they bump into this guy who is assailant, basically. So, days running. Chip calls to say he's on the way. I hang up wondering if I really want him to. I feel stuck between a hard-on and hard feelings I can't explain. I pass through the shower with lusty thoughts. They give way to a scary feeling that has me reaching for the tackle box. I wait before taking out the gun. Don't do it, I tell myself, sliding the box back under the bed. Sorry, I got to switch glasses, I can barely see. Soon I rush out the door, taking the steps 2 at a time. I'm happy he's here, so happy. I'm happy when we're together. Hey babe, Chip says, and I hey babe him back. Our gestures kiss since our lips can't just now. Chip U-turns with 0 traffic in both directions. As you can see, I'm excited for Buck Sunday, he says. He juts his hips forward to show off the outlines of a blunt hard-on. I harden instantly, and we touch each other there. The clutch in play, the car heaves, and we climb the hill to a red light ahead. If only we could tumble into the back seat now. I'm digmatized by this crazy passion between us. I slide my hand between his legs and search for the zipper. Down, boy, he says, with a wink of self-control. And controlled I am. The glowing red light stops us from going further. I'm looking from my love to the traffic ahead when the dread I felt all morning comes to life. Suddenly, the psycho motherfucker passes in front of us like a poltergeist on a bike, a wicked witch come to cast evil on us. The fastback sits low and he sits high on the bike. My bike, the bike my dad gave me for being a good boy. I cower in the seat as his shadowy presence sweeps over the windshield and blocks the light. Chip shouts and hits the horn, and now we are seen. The psycho motherfucker is reaching for the passenger side when I say, Chip, just go, just go. I search for the door handle and the motherfucker rolls out of the way. We lurch forward and speed through the intersection. We're up the hill now when Chip swings to the curb and says, that's him, isn't it, isn't it, isn't it? And I tell him, just go. He ignores me and launches from the seat. The trunk is at the front and he pops it open for what I know will be the bats. He shows me he has grabbed 2, one for him, one for me. Game on, he says, jumping into the car. The fastback lunges to the left and the tires squeal in a rubber-burning spin. We speed downhill to the same traffic light we've just bolted through. It's red, only this time we've glimpsed the future and lunged to grab it, to seize the light split-second change to green. Horns scream as we hook a left onto oncoming traffic. We charge forward in a way that seems to block the car off the road. The stretch ahead is straight, the parked cars distort the view in places. Then Chip says, there's that psycho motherfucker. And I say, yeah, that's him. That's the guy. Now the real chase, and the roaring, lunging, shifting, and now the distance between him and us closes fast. I hold onto the dashboard to sturdy myself against all forces in play. We're just behind the motherfucker now, so close I can see the ridge of his ankle as the bike pedals rise and fall. Our speed slows enough that we almost sneak up alongside him, except now he's looking dead at me, like he welcomes this, what's coming. With just a jerk of the wheel, how easy it would be to crush him against a parked car. But we dart left, like we're going around him, and then swing back to cut him off. Chip shouts, aim for the body, not the head. Break his fucking knees. Hurt that motherfucker. Bad. Warrior Chip catapults through the door, braced for battle. In the seconds I'm alone, I'm scared shitless. I have never hurt anyone before with more than words. I don't want to get out, but I have to get out. He will never forgive me if I don't. I tell myself the psycho motherfucker deserves crushed knees and cracked elbows, even a death blow, his head smashed, bashed in by gay boys like us. I push myself outside and break free of the loser voices inside my head. I want to be a winner. Chip expects me to be a winner. Now there's the whacking sound of the bat pounding flesh and the crashing sound of the bike hitting a parked car. I see the psycho motherfucker crumple to the street and then pull himself up to his feet by force of will. Gripping the bat, I follow Chip's voice into war. All I hear is a ping pong of shouting, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. Now I fly toward the shit as the motherfucker growls like the psycho he is. His eyes glow at me and I am the spoils of this battle to the death. Fuck him up, bust his fucking head, Chip shouts at me, his bat twirling like a samurai sword. I freeze long enough to see my bike flying in the air and nicking Chip just before crashing in the street. I tighten my grip on the bat until I can't feel my hands. Now I fly toward the shed wailing, fuck you. My bat hits his shoulder, whack, to stop him from punching Chip to the ground. I swing at his back, and he whirls his legs to trip me up to the ground. In the seconds it takes to roll up to my feet, he wields the bike like a battering ram, and now Chip swings, but never gets past striking the metal and tires, and somehow ends up slammed flat on his back. Now I surge forward to save my love, this time with both hands gripping the bat. The motherfucker lifts the bike into the air for the kill, and I swing and meet his knees with a thwack. The bike free falls before crashing down on him. The motherfucker reels sideways and hits the ground, raging that he will kill us. I bring the bat down on his body again and again until it cracks and split in two. For seconds, nothing moves, as if time has stopped everything but the noise around us, the car horns and the yowls of a growing crowd on the sidewalk. These are the psycho motherfucker's people. They urge him to get up. I lift the bike from Chip's body. He is dazed and bleeding, but insists he's okay. We scramble to the car, and now Chip's behind the wheel. I watch as the psycho motherfucker staggers to his feet, a Frankenstein now lurching toward us. The crowd is behind him, and I'm scared we won't get away. But the engine roars like a dragon to whisk us free. We hear the womp of the psycho's fist punching the back of the car as we speed away. We hear him shouting, punks. The bitch-ass punks that kicked your psycho black ass, Chip shouts out the window. He reaches across the seat to lift my hand in triumph. We have done what he's been wanting us to do. We have won by his definition. Blood splashes down the side of his face and sponges into his shirt, a gory reminder of what it took to stand up to a psychopath. Now I can see the geyser above his ear where the bike plundered skin. I can see the swelling where punches landed around his eyes and jawbone. Blood leaks down his forehead, yet he insists he's fine, though it's obvious to me he's seeing blood in his eyes and feeling dizzy. Babe, looks like you're gonna have to learn how to drive a stick like right now, he says, pulling over to the curb. I'm ready if you are, I say, lying. His lightheadedness worsens instantly. Our switching seats is way harder for him than it should be. He thinks we could drive to my house. I insist he needs professional attention, saying nothing about us freaking out my mom. We are a traffic light away from a right turn in the direction of the hospital, some miles away. We lurch along until I've mastered the gears, confident I'll get us there. Chip tells me I'm doing great, then weaves like a drunk before slumping sideways against the door. Please, don't freak out, I tell myself. The ER is near, we'll get there in time. Then what?
That was a tour de force. Thank you, Sean Stewart Ruff. Wow. Bar is high now for everybody. I'm glad I'm not reading next, it's almost. But you know who is? My other opera friend. Carson Tate's goal as an author is to spin tales with plot lines as interesting as the cases she encountered in her career as a criminal defense lawyer. She's the award-winning author of numerous novels of romance and romantic intrigue, including the Luca Bennett Bounty Hunter series and the Lone Star Law series. She's going to read from her December novel, Trial Run, which is the third and final installment of her Courting Danger series. The other titles in that series, the first book was Trial by Fire. The second was Trial and Error, and again, the third, Trial Run. Please welcome Carson Tate.
It's not as easy as it looks. Thanks, Rob. Thanks for having me here tonight. I'm so excited to be here and hear all these fantastic writers read from their work. It's inspirational, and I appreciate the opportunity. So the good thing about being a lawyer is you get great titles, you know, for books. And I worked in Dallas County and did federal and state criminal defense for a number of years. It gave me lots of great fodder for books. But and I, you know, worked on lots of cases, but the one thing I never got to do was be on a jury. Because I get called, and then in the first 5 minutes or so, as the prosecutor's like, hey, don't we have a case together? You know, get out of here. And so I never got to be on a jury, but I thought it'd be fun to write about jurors. And two jurors in this book are both very reluctant to be on a jury. One is a courthouse employee who has just quit there because of a traumatic event that occurred in one of the earlier books. And the other is a single mother who just has many reasons that she doesn't want to be on a jury. But she winds up having to do so because it's very important. And so I'm going to just give you a quick introduction to Brooke, and here we go. Mom, I hate these. Brooke looked up from her textbook at her son Ben, who was wearing his very best ick face while holding a partially eaten donut. She laughed. No one hates donuts. She cocked her head and frowned at him. Are you really my child? I don't hate all of them, just this one. And he made a spitting sound. It's horrible. Drama and donuts, that's pretty extra for a Monday morning. She reached out her hand. Give it to me. The sticky circle of wonder was, She reached for the sticky circle of wonder and took a big bite. The yeasty dough melted on her tongue and her mouth watered as she savored the sweet, salty bacon against the maple glaze. She held the rest of the donut in the air, pointing at her son. One day, mark my words, you will long for delectables such as these and wish you'd enjoyed more of them while you had the metabolism of a 12-year-old. What does that even mean? She shook her head, wishing she kept her mouth shut. Never mind, you don't need to worry about things like that for a very long time. She shoved one of the napkins that had come with the donuts into her book and slammed it shut. I think I'm ready for my exam. How about you? I guess so. I mean, I studied my brains out. Not as much as you. It was true. She had studied her brains out for her economics exam, but she wasn't entirely confident her efforts would pay off. She had a basic grasp of the subject, but every time she went to class or reviewed the materials, it felt like everyone was speaking a foreign language. She'd resorted to watching reruns of Billions and Wall Street to get a basic understanding. But whether any of those crutches would help with the test remained to be seen. She poured the last bit of coffee in the thermos and motioned for Ben to head to the car while she glanced at her watch. She had exactly enough time to drop him off at school for class, but when they barreled out the door, her landlord filled the door frame. Damn. Hi, Mr. Peterson. She mouthed, let me do the talking to Ben, hoping Peterson wouldn't bring up the past due rent in his presence. I was going to come see you after work today. See that you do, he said with an extra dose of surly. I won't hold my breath. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope, and she held her breath, praying it wasn't an eviction notice. The postman just came and he had this letter for you. I told him I'd bring it by. He held it up and squinted. Looks kind of official. He shoved it at her and she took it and stuffed it into her book bag without a second glance, taking a small amount of joy in his crestfallen expression, as he realized she wasn't going to share the contents. The guy had a lot of nerve intercepting her mail. No doubt he was hoping it was a big check so she could pay her rent on time. Fat chance. Mom, we better get going, right? She shrugged away her thoughts about Mr. Peterson and led Ben to the car. When they pulled up at school, the lack of cars told her she was late. Again. Sorry, bud. It's okay, we missed all the waiting in line this way. She grabbed his shoulder and squeezed before he jumped out of the car. Some days his positive attitude was the only thing that kept her going. She was a grown-ass woman, and she shouldn't be relying on an adolescent to keep her sane. She sighed and shifted her focus to the rest of the day. If she didn't hurry up, she was going to be late to her own exam, and college professors were way less accommodating than middle school teachers. James, the teaching assistant for Professor Wiles, was passing out the exam as she walked into the room. He shot her the same annoyed glance she'd received many times throughout the semester, and she slipped into a seat in the back of the room and fumbled through her bag in a quest to find a pen that worked. Her hand brushed the letter Mr. Peterson had brought over, and she bent the edge to look at the return address. Dallas County Courts. Definitely not a check. Nothing good came from a court notice. She looked back up at the front of the room and saw that James was still several rows in front of her, so she risked a look at the inside of the letter. And her heart stopped when she spotted capital letters in big red type. Jury summons. Crap. One more obligation to navigate in her already overpacked schedule. Single working moms with a full college load should automatically get a free pass. She started to rip open the envelope to see what hoops she'd have to jump through to make that happen when James' voice hissed in her ear. It's a little late to be looking at your notes. She met his eyes with her most stern mother look and let the frost linger for a full moment before she put the envelope away and accepted her copy of the exam. 2 hours later, she handed it in and prayed for the best. She rushed to her car to find a ticket for having exceeded the time on the meter, and she stuffed it in the bag with the jury summons. The law was not on her side today. A few minutes later, she pushed through the door at Dante's, the restaurant where she worked when she wasn't in school. Lunch prep was in full swing, and the owner, Lydia, called out for her to head directly to the private room in the back, get it ready for a special reservation. She gladly complied and used the first few minutes in the empty space to read through the rest of the letter from the court. A quick scan of the possible ways out told her she didn't have a viable excuse. She'd have to show up in person to plead her case. When she checked the report date, she saw it was for Monday morning. How could that be? She'd never gotten a jury summons before, but surely they gave a person more than 48 hours notice before sucking their lives away. Why isn't there water on the table? Brooke whirled around, startled by Lydia's voice. Sorry, I just got some bad news. I'm gonna have to take Monday off. No chance. We've got the Rotary Club lunch and that other thing. I need everyone working all week. Brooke held up the notice for her to see. Nothing I can do about it. Jury summons. Lydia laughed. Seriously? I've gotten 4 of those that've gone all in the trash. She held her arms out wide. Don't see me getting thrown in jail, do you? She smiled. The cops have better things to do than hunt down no-shows for snooze duty. Trust me, you'll be fine. Toss it. But for now, focus on your job. Lydia glided out of the room and Brooke watched her go. Maybe she was right. She could toss the notice just this once. She'd make a promise to herself never to ignore another one. Who would know? Her phone chose that exact moment to loudly announce a new call with the obnoxious Imperial March ringtone Ben had chosen for his incoming calls. She pulled the phone to her ear without bothering to glance at the screen. Hey kiddo, make it fast, the boss is close by. No need to worry, the boss is in her office. The voice was low and even. Not Ben. No, someone else. Someone close by. She glanced around the room, but she was the only one there. She held the phone out at arm's length and looked at the screen. Unknown caller. Had to be a crank call. She moved her thumb toward the red button to hang up, but froze at the next words. Listen carefully to everything I'm about to say. That notice you got? Ben's life depends on it.
It's intermission. I will not really eat up too much time. We are running a little ahead, so I want to Carson mentioned being on jury duty, and I've been called 5 times. I have served 5 times. The most recent time, that was about 5 years ago, and I was on a murder trial. And during voir dire, they asked, I should be getting off all the time, okay? I have a sister who was a judge, an uncle who was a cop. I have been arrested. Let's, we'll wait for the memoir, okay? I haven't been a crime victim. Everything, it should be like a slam dunk, get out. I just tell the truth, and they put me on every jury. The most recent one, 5 years ago, murder trial, Jersey City. During voir dire, they were asking everybody how you would feel if a gay person moved in next to you. Well, okay, so clearly we're going to have a little LGBTQ angle to this trial. I just said, when I was questioned, I said I'd be fine with it as long as it wasn't my ex. Well, I got the laugh I was going for. Even the judge laughed, and then they said, "Okay, you're selected." But it was a great, and it was like 2.5 weeks of testimony and deliberation, and it was intense. People brought into that jury room, they brought their talents. We had a forensic scientist who could speak to some things. Other things were going, everyone else was contributing what they knew, even if it was like what they knew about life on the streets. Me, I was the one that said we were all trying to, the other jurors were trying to figure out what it meant that the suspect had sent a dick pic to the victim earlier that day. And they're like, because they're trying to claim the guy knew him already. I'm like, he wouldn't have sent him a dick pic if, he'd already seen the goods, right? So I've got everyone the forensic stuff and and me, I'm just like, yeah, no, that's not how gay men work, If you've seen it, you don't need a new picture. Doesn't change that much in a few days. Okay. So what I'm saying is, Carson, come to me. Any of you mystery writers, come to me next time with your jury questions. Especially, I guess, if they involve dick pics. Our upcoming, I told you about the Nikki Giovanni reading coming up a week from tomorrow, Saturday, February 1st, 6 o'clock. Wednesday, February 19th at 7 p.m., Outspoken will be back with Tom Cardamone, Dale Corvino, still here? I thought I saw him, okay. Dan Meltz, Frederick Smith, Kathleen Warnock, Jerry Wheeler, Bruce Whitaker. Thursday, March 13th, Outspoken returns again here, 7 p.m. Barry Brenisill, Lucian Childs, Elizabeth Costello, Stephen Greco, Christopher Gillette, Sean Stewart Ruff will be back with us, Sarah Sarai. And then we get into the serious stuff. So I want you all to mark your calendars, or at least be on our newsletters so you know they're coming. On March 17th, on or about March 17th, we will be announcing the finalists and special award winners for our awards this year. On Thursday, I write down everything else, right? On Thursday, April 17th, at the new school on 12th Street here in Manhattan, will be our award ceremony and reception, which follows. Our award ceremony is free. Our reception is free. It will be live streamed for free. It's not a judgment on anybody else. Everyone does their own thing. Ours is all free though, so please do join us. It's a lot of fun. We've really upped our game in the last few years, so do join us. I should also say, we're gonna have we won't have a regular Outspoken reading in April, but we will have our finalist readings for people that are up for awards on Thursday, April 15th and Wednesday, April 16th, the 2 days right before the ceremony. And also, while I'm got it on my list here, on Saturday, April 5th at 3 p.m., we're gonna have a special panel with writers from Bywater Books. They'll be hosted by our own Carol Rosenfeld and includes Samara Brager, Anna Burke, Cheryl Head, and Ann McMahon. So be there. And again, free, all free. Actually, okay, I will take your personal donations. Our next reader is Gar McVeigh Russell. Gar's first novel, Sin Against the Race, which was published by Gamer Books in 2017, was listed on the Advocate's Best Books We Read in 2018, the LGBTQ novels. His short stories, Tom of Bolt Hall and The Necklace, were finalists in the Saints and Sinners LGBTQ Literary Festival Fiction Open and appear in their 2020 and 2022 anthologies, respectively. He's currently working on a second novel. Gar is married and lives in Oakland, California, where he listens to a lot of jazz. He's joining us tonight from Oakland. Please welcome Gar McVeigh Russell.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Oh, my heavens, I can see the audience now. No pressure. Thank you all. I'm going to be reading an excerpt from my work in progress, the second novel. It's called Oh Happy Day. Oh Happy Day is the story of two teens from Oakland. AJ and Kurt. We'll be hearing a bit of AJ's story from the beginning of the book and his journey. AJ suffered a horrible trauma, which his family is oblivious to, and he's contemplating how he's having to deal with this trauma, potentially with seeing the person who caused it again. The story is set in 1993, April 5th, 1993. In the early hours of Monday morning, for the first time in years, a polar bear slid into my head. They appeared in my nightmares a lot when I was younger, the manifestation of an unsettled past. White giants with huge paws, fangs dripping from their grimaces, hot air snorting from their nostrils. They ran me down, tried to pounce on and smother me. How many kids in East Oakland have nightmares about polar bears? I sure did, and they scared the shit out of me, for reasons I scarcely wanted to think about. I figured, okay, I'm almost 16 now, enough of this bullshit. Confront the beast. Ultimately, the beast won without moving an inch. Its growl, its scent, its breath upon my skin, its frozen look of anger and vengeance did me in. Scarring memories that I couldn't chase away with bravado forced an immediate retreat. I woke up with a yelp, sweating, panting, my fingers clutching the sheets. That scared, lonely 13-year-old who cried himself to sleep night after night began to resurface, briefly, before I calmed myself. The necklace I kept under my pillow acted as a talisman against this type of evil. I grabbed it and held it close to my chest, remembered the beautiful soul who gave it to me long ago, and breathed. I thought the polar bears were gone for good, ignoring the reality that the creatures I lived with, beasts on two legs, had the power to bring them back into my life. Gil Scott-Heron was right when he sang, "Home is where the hatred is." Because of their hate, I had no home, only not home, a place I tried to avoid as much as possible. Just the same, I knew their evil would travel with me, occupy my mind all day at school. So now we jump ahead to where AJ is running the track at school and thinking about things. How can I best explain my situation and not home? Let's talk about the prisoner. One Sunday evening, they who must be obeyed ordered me to watch some TV program they said would buttress my moral fiber. As soon as they all went to bed, I started channel surfing. My itchy index finger clicked the remote hard. Nothing stayed on for more than a couple seconds. Up the dial I went until I hit KTEH, the public TV station out of San Jose. A man wearing what looked like Captain Kangaroo jacket walked around on the darkened set. I loved the captain as a little kid, so I hung out to see what was up. Dude in the jacket acted as a host, introducing the prisoner. He described it as a product of science fiction, George Orwell, Franz Kafka, late 60s Cold War spy kitsch, and a big dose of whimsy all thrown together. Surfing halted for good. The prisoner features number 6, an ex-secret agent, one of the best of his field. He had noisily and forcefully resigned from his job, slamming his fist on his boss's desk, causing the tea to spill and the saucer to break. It's a matter of conscience, he insisted. Soon after resigning, though, he gets gassed and kidnapped and winds up in the village. As sinister, the village, it looks like a seaside resort, a multicolored Mediterranean villa, but in truth, the village is a sinister prison. The warders use drugs and torture to raid the prisoners' minds, to break them, make them conform. The only prisoner who resists is number 6. Every Sunday, I stayed up late to watch number 6 outwit his captors, retain his privacy and personhood. Sometimes he stumbled, but he lived to fight another day. Number 6 became my hero, my inspiration. His journey helped me to navigate my own bullshit. You see, Not Home was my village. It all started when I noisily and forcefully resigned as a featured member of the choir at my family church. My family belonged to the Fairfax Higher Hopes Church of the Divine on Foothill at Belvedere. A guy named L. Rufus Blade founded the church in the old Fairfax Theater back in 1977, the year of my birth. Blade held raucous services, his sermons thundering with the message of Black self-determination. Oakland's public access channel rebroadcasted them, giving Blade citywide access. This made his church one of the most popular in Oakland. Politicians came frequently for photo ops with Blade to prove that they were down with the community. Through his political connections, Blade gained access to community redevelopment funds. We will open new businesses on Foothill, restore what white flight took away from us, he declared. Once a month, he doled out low-interest business loans backed by the city and county to families that had the soundest business plans and who showed the greatest fealty to his ideas of Black liberation. Blade made a real show of it. He brought a family on stage, presented them with one of those oversized checks, kind of like Publishers Clearinghouse. My mother obsessed over those business loans to the point of mania. Well, actually, it was probably 7 steps past mania. She made it everyone's business to do what they could to get involved with the church, support Blade in his programs. Good things happen when you catch the pastor's eyes, she said frequently. I joined the choir when I was 10, my contribution to the family mission. Blade took an interest in me from the jump, always visiting choir rehearsal to see me. He recommended a teacher for me to my mother, though he longed to teach me himself. He's such a promising young singer, Mrs. Lee, he told my mother often. The attention I received thrilled her. Soon I became the youngest member of choir, the solo. Every Sunday opened with "Oh Happy Day," the original version, based on the original version by Edwin Hawkins. The choir had a rotation of who sang the shouts. Instead of shouting praises to the Lord like on the Hawkins recording, we shouted praises to Blade, a way to introduce him on stage. He personally tapped me to do this, and I was scared shitless. My mother noted my nervousness and gave me words of encouragement. You better get yourself together and do this thing. The first time I did it with the spotlight on me, the only person I saw in the audience was my mother. As the band and choir did their thing, these words tumbled out. Happy day. Oh, happy day. You better get yourself together. Pastor Blade is on his way. He's gonna teach us some truths now and give us all a happy day. My shouts became his favorite. Everything ended 3 years later on one fateful Sunday. I was scheduled to do the shouts, but nerves kept me from going up. Blade walked on stage without the introduction. When he got to the pulpit, he looked back and silently called me with a hard stare and curling finger. Finally, I jumped down from the risers and walked slowly towards him. But when I got within a few feet of him, nausea overcame me, and I uncontrollably projectile hurled my half-chested grip. Yellow-green goo slobbered all over his vestment robe, Yerkadan pants, and shoes. I ran off the stage and out the back door, never to return. My noisy, forceful resignation didn't go over too well at Not Home. Family ties vanished. They treated me like unused furniture. In the language of the village, I became unmutual, an unrepentant rebel who flouted the rules. From my perspective, my parents became the chromosomes. We shared genes, and that was it. My brother Jerome I called Brother Righteous, a closet case terror in a league of his own. The only good side was that they no longer made me go to that church. Apparently, Blade excused me from further attendance. I had no problem with that. Then yesterday happened. They spent Sunday dinner talking about Brother Righteous. He turned 18 in February, making him eligible for confirmation. He also attended the church's parochial school and was valedictorian of his first graduating class. For all these accomplishments, the church planned a bigger than normal confirmation ceremony for him. Brother Righteous sat across the table looking all smug, like I gave a shit about his little ceremony. Then XX said very calmly and casually that the ceremony would happen on Sunday, June 6th, and that I was expected to attend. For real, I said, sneering, startled. You making me go? It's a family event, she said. No, we have an agreement, remember? Arthur Julian, XY bellowed, going to the family church for the first time in years isn't going to kill you. You'll embarrass the family if you don't go to this big event for your brother. The beloved founder will be expecting you, so no drama. Straighten up and act right, you hear? No drama. Wasn't sure if he meant don't make a fuss and just go, or don't throw up on Blade, aka the beloved founder again. On the show, they asked number 6 repeatedly, why did you resign? The chromosomes never really asked me that question. For that matter, they never asked why I got so sick the final day in choir. 3 days before that fateful Sunday, Blade drove me to his house, ostensibly to give me music lessons, my old teacher having moved out of town. Instead, he took me to his bedroom and introduced me to the giant polar bear skin rug at the foot of his bed. He forced me to strip naked and lie on top of it. He then climbed on top of me. My head was pressed next to the polar bear's, its face frozen in an eternal grimace by a taxidermist. With my eyes squinted, my mouth stretched wide, my upper teeth bared from biting my lower lip, as I endured the pain of Blade inside of me. Did I resemble the polar bear? Was I also dead, having been conquered? Tears mixed with the rain falling on my face as I ran the track, horrified that I could still recall the feeling of his crushing weight and his breath on the back of my neck, recall the stench of the dead polar bear's fur. And I just kept thinking how I couldn't run fast enough to escape what I feared would come from seeing that man again.
Dr. Blade Russell, thank you, Gar. See you in Senior Saints and Sinners this year again?
Oh, I don't know. My 60th birthday happens actually that weekend, so.
Well, you'd be there in spirit then, I guess. I have a feeling I'm gonna be there alone this year, I don't know. No, I won't be. Oh, yes, Don, I did see you on the website. Donna Minkowitz will be there. Carol Roosevelt will be there. Wilva Good. Oh, and I forgot, Ann Laughlin's gonna be there. And I'm glad, how coincidental. Our next reader is Ann Laughlin. And let me just add, we have a bunch of out-of-town mystery writers in because the Mystery Writers of America are having a big meeting this weekend. And this is great because as I think everyone knows, this is our third year of having the Joseph Anson Award for LGBTQ crime writing that was conceived of and is underwritten by the amazing Michael Nava. And so we're glad that this helps shine an additional light, a spotlight on queer crime writing. And and also now that it gives us, our out-of-town friends, something to do in New York besides hang out at the hotel. So. Anne Laughlin has won, and the other thing, when Anne approached me about reading it I was like, it's so funny, I'm in the middle of your book right now, so. Cold Case, it's available here, by the way, for those of you in the room, and for those of you at home, buy it from your local independent bookseller. Do not buy it from Amazon, you know better than that. You were raised better than that. Anne Laughlin has won 4 Goldie Awards and has been shortlisted 3 times for Lammy Awards. In 2022, she won the Alice B. Award for her body of work. She has written 8 novels, all published by Bold Strokes Books. She lives with her wife in Chicago, where she volunteers to teach adults to read. Please welcome Anne Laughlin.
Thank you. Yes, it's a thrill to be here, and thank you, Rob, for inviting me, and for our hosts here. I'm going to read from my new book, Clean Kill, came out in May, and
Look, I give you the
Cold
wrong title.
Case, I think.
Yeah, Clean Kill.
Clean
Yeah,
Kill.
sorry, everyone.
That's all right. And just to set it up a little bit before this reading, all you need to know is that my protagonist, Nikki Sullivan, is a former Chicago homicide cop who left her job. She pretty much drank her way out of her job, and now 5 years later is sober and is working as the resident manager at a sober living home. So one of her residents is accused of stealing from the house, and Nikki doesn't believe she's done it, but her boss insists that Lou be kicked out of the house. So Lou is gone, we don't know where, and Nikki is determined to find her. Nikki headed out to the first gay bar she could think of that Lou might have gone to. As part of her recovery, Nikki had stayed away from bars as if they were plague infested, but now she parked in front of one in Andersonville, hoping to find Lou, or at least some hint as to where she might be. Donna's was huge by lesbian bar standards, with 3 large rooms and an outdoor patio. Nikki had spent a fair amount of time there when she wasn't in a cop bar, usually when she thought it would be a good idea to hook up with someone. She treated the bar not so much as a drinking establishment, but rather as a sort of 7-Eleven for sex, a place to stop on the way home to pick up what she needed. The main room featured a charmless bar that looked to be constructed of plywood and formica. She imagined the tool-belted crew of lesbians building the bar in exchange for beer. All the spindly stools were occupied. Nikki stood awkwardly, trying to decide where to settle. 2 women pulled away from the bar and headed toward the dance music in the back room. Nikki slipped into a spot and instantly felt at home as the heels of her boots clicked into place on the lower rung of the stool, and she leaned forward with her elbows on the bar. It was a single fluid movement that gave her a sense of comfort, as if a muscle memory was exercised. A bartender appeared in front of her and grabbed a bottle of vodka from the well, the sound of glass clanging against the metal bringing an ocean of memory over her. She fully expected a shot to appear in front of her next to a bottle of Pabst. "What do you have?" she asked. "Coffee." She wasn't surprised to get a cup of undrinkable sludge, worse than anything she'd had at the station house, but it served its purpose of not looking like any of the drinks around her, to prevent her from accidentally picking up the wrong glass. It's not that she wanted a drink, but she didn't entirely trust herself to not find one magically in her hand. A woman about Nikki's age sat on the empty stool next to her. She looked familiar, but there was no memory attached. She had short dark hair, an athletic body, and a face that was handsome but pockmarked. She ordered a beer and waited for it before turning to Nikki. "Do I know you?" she said. "You might. You look familiar to me." "Me too, but I haven't a clue where we met." They were silent for a bit, Nikki staring at her mug of coffee, the other woman downing her beer. "I'm Colleen," she said. "Nikki. Were you ever on the softball team?" She was sitting sideways on her stool studying Nikki. "Never." "Dykes on bikes?" Nikki grinned no. Colleen finished her drink and ordered another before turning back to Nikki. "Did we sleep together?" Nikki didn't know if they had, but it seemed the most likely explanation, and it wouldn't have surprised her at all. "Well, I'm sure if we did, I'd remember it." Colleen shrugged. "I don't know. No offense, of course, but I'm not so young anymore, and there have been a lot of girls." Nikki guessed there'd been a lot of booze too, but no sense mentioning that. Colleen ordered a shot and offered Nikki one. "No thanks, I'm good." She nodded at Nikki's coffee cup. "Not drinking tonight?" How easy it would be to order a beer. There wasn't a soul in the bar that knew Nikki had quit, and one who would be delighted to buy her a drink. It seemed the most natural thing in the world to say yes. "I'm afraid I drank up my quota of booze. Now I stay away." "One day at a time, right?" "That's what they say." "Then why come to a bar?" "I'm here trying to find someone. Maybe you know her." Colleen started peeling the label off her beer bottle. "Did you lose a girlfriend or something?" "No, it's someone I'm worried about. Her name is Lou." "Don't know anyone named Lou." "She's big, about 6 feet, stocky, buzz cut." "Sounds charming," Colleen said, "but I don't think I've seen her here, not that I noticed." A woman wormed her way to the bar on the other side of Colleen, giving her a kiss on the cheek, and Nikki knew she'd lost her. She gave up her bar stool and wandered to the back room to look at the dancers. She thought it was as likely she'd see a grizzly bear on the dance floor as Lou, but she'd learned long ago to be thorough. There was a billiards room right off the side of the dance floor. She slipped by the dancers and swung the door open, the noise from the music nearly disappearing as soon as the door swung shut behind her. Every head turned to see her as if she'd walked into a Western saloon with her shooting hand on her gun belt. The room had a small bar and 3 pool tables. She moved to the bar with as much cool as she could muster and ordered a soda from the bored bartender. She didn't see Lou, but she saw women who looked like Lou, same age, same surface toughness, same buzz cut. She waited patiently until one of the players came to the bar for a refill. She was a shorter version of Lou, with a serious look on her face. Nikki wondered if she was not having any fun, or if that was the tough look she thought she should project, the "don't fuck with me" mask. It looked exhausting to haul it around everywhere. "Another beer, TJ?" the bartender said. "Make it 3. TJ turned to Nikki as she waited for the drinks. She didn't as much look her over as size her up. "Can I ask you something?" Nikki said. "I guess." TJ dug a wallet out of the thigh pocket of her cargo pants and threw a bill on the bar. "What do you want?" "I'm looking for a woman named Lou. Maybe you know her." TJ looked puzzled and suspicious. "Why would I know her?" "I'm not saying you do." TJ shrugged and grabbed the beers with one hand. "Well, I don't."
Thank you, Ann Laughlin, author of Clean Kill, formerly titled Cold Case. And we have one more mystery writer coming up. Rob Osler writes traditional mystery novels and short stories featuring queer main characters. His latest novel, The Case of the Missing Maid, the first book of the new historical series Harriet Morrow Investigates, is a USA Today bestseller, an Amazon editor's pick for best mystery, thriller and suspense, and earned a starred review from Publishers Weekly. Rob has been a finalist for the Edgar, Anthony, Agatha, Lepke, and McAvity Awards and has won the Mystery Writers of America Robert L. Fish Award. After living in Boise, Chicago, and Seattle It must have been hard to give up Boise, but Rob resides.
Hey now, hey now.
Rob resides in California with his husband and a tall gray cat. Please welcome Rob Osler.
Thank you, New York. I'm zooming in from San Francisco. So this is the case of the missing maid. It's set in Chicago in the Progressive era, which is 1890 to 1920. And this story takes place in 1898. And I'm just going to read from the beginning, so there's not that much setup. But young Harriet Morrow, she's 21 years old, is showing up for work at the detective agency that she's just been hired for. And the agency principal, Theodore Prescott, did not send a memo to staff that he had hired a female detective. And it goes something like this. Again, I'm starting with chapter 1. Harriet Morrow considered the fashions of 1898 little improved over the year before. Long bell-shaped skirts and silly frilly blouses with puffed shoulders continued to emphasize the distinction between the sexes, as if she or anyone else needed reminding who wore the pants. The popular silhouette, white at the top and bottom with a nipped waist, fit Harriet's midsection as well as a watermelon in a bread box. For reasons both practical and personal, she longed for the simplicity of men's straight-legged trousers and a white starched shirt. Although acquiescing to convention with a wardrobe of plain-fronted white shirtwaist and a black bow tie, jacket, and skirt from the cheaper racks in Marshall Field's women's department, she'd rather paste grass clippings to a straw bonnet than pay $2 for some ready-made women's frippery. Harriet tucked her wiry auburn hair beneath a man's black bowler, purchased from Sears Roebuck and Company for a reasonable $1.10. Although an avid bicyclist, Harriet had left her prized Overman Victoria at home. Today was not a day to risk dirtying the hem of her skirt. Grabbing the streetcar's last open seat, she sat wedged shoulder to shoulder between two fellow passengers on the hard wooden bench. Given the chilly March morning, she was grateful for the shared warmth of the body on either side. Anyone looking at her might mistake her knees jittering beneath her handbag as shivers when in truth she was anxious. In a quarter hour, she would meet her co-workers for the first time and didn't doubt that most, if not all of them, would think her entirely unsuitable for her new position. She'd do herself no favors by revealing her nervousness. 3 blocks from her final destination, Harriet hopped down from the streetcar and joined the throng of mostly men, all wearing nearly indistinguishable long, dark woolen coats and hats, hurrying in all directions. In her 21 years of living in Chicago, the city had grown to become the nation's second largest. With miles of sidewalks swarming with pedestrians and a sprawling grid of congested streets, the Midwestern metropolis throbbed with a dizzying cacophony of humanity. Not for the first time, she appreciated the city's leader's decision to elevate the passenger train serving downtown. The first full circuit of the Loop had been completed just the year before. Its structure of riveted steel plate resembled that of Paris's famed Eiffel Tower, or so Harriet had read in the pages of the Chicago Tribune. Dodging several buggies and delivery wagons and barely avoiding being run over by a new Doria motor car, a contraption that turned every head, Harriet crossed North LaSalle Street to number 30, stepped inside the marbled lobby, and joined the huddle waiting for an elevator. Happy for the warmth, she glanced apprehensively at those around her, wondering if any of these men and women would soon be her colleagues. What might they think of her? Welcoming, incredulous? Or worse, might they be dismissive? Whatever reception she might receive, she couldn't allow it to affect her performance. She had taken a risk by quitting her bookkeeping job at Rock Island. Although the work had been mind-numbingly boring with no prospect for advancement and insufferably dusty from the grain elevators, it had been steady, providing just enough for both her and her brother. With scant savings to fall back on, she had no opportunity to make a go of it upstairs. After stops on each ascending floors, the doors finally opened to the 6th and the offices of the Prescott Detective Agency. With a "pardon me" and "sorry, sir, but if I might just," she wiggled her way out from the rear of the packed cabin. She had been to these offices once before. Last week, she shocked the agency's principal, Theodore Prescott, by presenting a clipping of his agency's ad seeking a junior operative along with her application. Met with Prescott's furrowed brow, she had argued that Chicago's unsavory characters would be more inclined to let down their guard and reveal their secrets to a woman. Animated by her audacity, the diminutive Prescott had leapt from his chair, revealing his immaculately tailored gray worsted suit, the color matching his voluminous beard, and English-style shoes polished to a fine sheen. Detective work is a man's work, he had lectured, adding that her boldness would surely dissolve when confronting the city's dark alleys, seedy pool halls, and nefarious gambling dens. With all due respect, sir, Harriet had said, knowing she would not win him over by tucking her tail, I may not wear trousers or whiskers, but history has shown both to be an unreliable indicator of either courage or intelligence. As Prescott had sputtered in astonishment, she'd held his gaze. Raise up your skirt a few inches, he'd managed to say. The demand was scandalous. But Harriet suspected Prescott wanted only better to see her shoes. Despite hers costing but a small fraction of his, they were of a remarkably similar style. After an awkward silence, Prescott surprised her by saying nothing about her men's footwear, and instead declared her ankles to be thick and sturdy, which would prove beneficial given the rigors of the job. He had then offered her employment as a junior field operative on a trial basis. Despite Prescott offering her less than the salary advertised, he presumed he'd be hiring a man. At $9 a week, she'd now earned 50% more than before. Struggling to contain her excitement, she'd accepted the job on the spot. Who are you here to see? The receptionist asked. That the young woman had no recollection of Harriet's visit the week before was unusual. Her bowler hat, conservative attire, and mannish features, broad nose, thin lips, and a square jaw, stood in opposition to the look common among women in downtown offices, exemplified by the petite receptionist's own stylish clothing, chorus girl looks, and abundant blonde curls pulled into a tidy knot atop her head. The woman would surely draw admiring looks from any man or woman who, like Harriet, preferred a female's curves over a man's straight and uninspiring frame. I'm not sure who asked for it, Harriet admitted. You see, I'm a new employee. I'm to be a junior field operative. The receptionist's tidy brows lifted. Oh, are you quite sure you haven't confused us with another firm? This is the Prescott Agency. Over the puffed shoulder of the receptionist's white shirtwaist, Harriet could see the large Prescott Agency sign. Yes, I'm quite aware. But we have no female detectives. Would you please notify Mr. Prescott of my arrival? Harriet asked. My name is Harriet Morrow. The young woman glanced at the grandfather clock in the corner. But it's only 8 o'clock. Mr. Prescott never arrives before 9. Then his secretary, perhaps, might she be available? Harriet recalled meeting her when she applied for the job. Madeline. We didn't have an occasion to speak, but I'm sure she'll remember my interview with Mr. Prescott. Maybe she is expecting me? Madeline, the woman said, looking like she'd been pinched. Yes, if you'd be so kind as to let her know Harriet Morrow has arrived for her first day of work. I'm sure Mr. Prescott would prefer I begin straight away than to sit on my hands until he arrives. Hearing fast approaching footsteps, Harriet looked up and immediately recognized the principal's secretary, who, easily 2 decades her senior, exuded self-importance based not on her own authority, but rather on her proximity to it. Madeline carried in excess of 24 pounds and moved with the determination of a locomotive. With the receptionist racing to keep up, Madeline started talking before reaching the lobby. I'm afraid there's been a mistake. This is the Prescott Agency. Yes, I'm fully. If you'd like to leave an application for a secretary position, you're welcome to do so. But at present, Madam, Harriet raised a hand, bringing Madeline up short. My name is Harriet Morrow. I was hired by Mr. Prescott last Thursday. Do you not recall my meeting him? Madeline waved an arm dismissively through the air, wafting a cloying scent of talcum powder. Then I'm sorry to say you misunderstood. We have no positions. The receptionist continued to observe the conversation as if watching 2 shoppers tussle over the last head of lettuce. Harriet took a deep breath and expelled it silently, trying to project a cordial manner. This woman was, after all, her boss's gatekeeper. Perhaps it's best then if I sit and wait for Mr. Prescott. You shall do no such thing, Madeline snapped, surprising Harriet with her abruptness. Mr. Prescott is a very busy man. I keep his calendar. He has no time for interviews today. As I say, if you care to leave an application... Harriet had expected to be tested by her colleagues, just not before she'd progressed beyond the lobby. She couldn't allow herself to be dismissed by the secretary. What would Prescott think? Standing her ground during the interview had won her the job. She hadn't wilted when confronting Theodore Prescott. She wasn't about to do so now because his blustery secretary was uninformed. If she were to last the first hour in the role, she would need to stay put. Madam, I am here because Mr. Prescott hired me. Harriet paused just long enough for her next words to carry extra weight. as a junior field operative. That you are unaware of my employment does not erase the fact. I was told to report here, she glanced at the clock, precisely 6 minutes and 15 seconds ago. I have no intention of not being present when Mr. Prescott arrives. I shall wait. To Madeline's sputtering dismay and the receptionist's stunned silence, Harriet lowered herself back onto the sofa's thin cushion, maintaining eye contact with Madeline. Well, we shall see about what Mr. Prescott has to say, Madeline huffed. Harriet gave a sharp nod. I'm pleased we agree that it's his word that matters. Accepting momentary defeat, the secretary threw her arms in the air, dispensing another whiff of powder, spun on her short heels, and retreated down the corridor. The receptionist wore an unreadable expression which Harriet guessed was either admiration or pity or perhaps a bit of both. Her accompanying words, "You've got nerve," did nothing to clarify her intent. At 10 minutes past 9, Harriet sensed her left buttock had fallen asleep when Theodore Prescott marched into the lobby. Seeing Harriet, he barked, "What in blazes are you doing there? I don't pay my employees to sit and gaze out the window." Struggling to her feet, Harriet started to explain, but Prescott was already halfway down the hall toward his office, still barking. "I suggest you follow me, Miss Morrow, unless you want your first day as an operative at this agency to be your last." Harriet hurried after her new boss. She caught the dumbfounded look on the receptionist's face. She couldn't help but return a smile. Theodore Prescott had just confirmed it. She was now a detective. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob Osler. Our final reader tonight. Look, I learned to do myself. It's my pleasure to introduce Chris Shirley, an award-winning writer and director and former president of the board of Lambda Literary. Tonight, he will read from his IPPY award-winning novel, Playing by the Book, which delves into the struggles of a fundamentalist preacher's son reconciling his faith and sexuality. Great book, by the way. Originally from Alabama, Chris now lives in Manhattan with his partner, Allie. Please give a warm welcome to Chris Shirley.
Thank you all. It's great to be here. Thank you, Rob. I have been to this space many times, but I've never read here. It's just great to be here at the Bureau. So thank you so much for that. And thanks to the Publishing Triangle. So I'll be reading from Playing by the Book. It's a coming out novel, and I'll be reading from the very beginning, so there's no real setup here. Columbia's mentioned a few times. I have a few friends who are either work at Columbia or I went to school with at Columbia, so it's great to see you guys here. Kabam! I popped up in my seat, not knowing if we'd landed or gotten shot down. "I'd like to be the first to welcome you to New York," the pilot announced. Some welcome sounded more like a warning shot. I quickly stuffed my New York travel guides in my backpack and capped my highlighter, not believing I was spending half a summer at the most prestigious high school journalism program in the world. The Columbia University Summer in Journalism program is limited to high school newspaper editors and has an acceptance rate that probably rivals their undergraduate program. As far as I could tell, no kid from Alabama, let alone Tarsus, Alabama, population 7,022, had ever attended. Getting accepted was tough, but the biggest hurdle was winning over the preacher. I mean, my dad. I first called him preacher when I was 5, since Mama and everyone else did. At the time, I half expected him to send me to bed early or take away my television privileges, but he smiled real big and halfway nodded, so the name stuck. I tried calling Mama Anna around the same time, but that didn't go over so well. Anyway, the very day I got my Columbia acceptance letter, Mama and I role-played my conversation with the preacher so I could perfect my sales pitch. The two major hurdles we had to clear were the price of the program and the fact that it began the very week of our church's Vacation Bible School. You see, the preacher thought I was going to be the Vacation Bible School director this year because, well, I sort of said I would. But that was before I even knew about the Columbia program. Sitting at my place at the kitchen table, Mama lowered her voice to play me, and I played my dad, even scratching my balls for effect, since it's one of Dad's great ball scratchers. We continued for a solid hour and put together a winning platform. But over dinner that evening, the preacher cut me off before I even got going good. He said, Jake, you agreed to leave Vacation Bible School this summer, right? You can't be at church in Columbia at the same time. Mama jumped right in. But it's a huge opportunity for him. There's no more important work than the Lord's work, the preacher said. And then he turned to me. And how much would this cost anyway? I shuffled my feet. $5,000. The preacher did a double take. $5,000? We don't have that kind of money. I casually leaned in just as Mama had when we rehearsed this exact scenario earlier. But I have a few thousand saved. You are not touching your college fund, he said with a dismissive wave. You're going to need it next year. But this is for classes at a college, I said, holding the preacher's gaze, one of the best colleges in the world. I said no, and that's final. Plus, there's another youth service coming in July, and you're preaching. Whew, my chest tightened at the thought of preaching again. My last sermon had been an epic failure and quite possibly the most humiliating experience of my life. The Columbia program ends a few days before that, but Dad, I really don't want to. Jake, you've got to get back in the saddle and preach again. The preacher looked down at his plate and continued eating. A few weeks later, on the very evening that my Columbia acceptance was to expire, I began to panic and decided to go for broke. With no real plan in mind, I tiptoed down the hallway just before dinner and peeked through the partially open door of the preacher's study, walls lined with bookcases, jam-packed with biblical text. The preacher was sitting at his big oak desk. He saw me and took off his big reading glasses and said, "What's up?" "Oh, preacher, I need to talk about Columbia." The look on his face made it clear that he had nothing left to say on the matter. "I am not discussing this again, Jake." We just stared at each other. I'd already told him 1,000,000 times that the Columbia program was just what I needed as the new editor of the Tarsus High School Tatler. It would teach me all the ins and outs of running a newspaper and could even come in handy for the church's website and monthly newsletter. Plus, being immersed in journalism 24/7 would help me figure out if that was indeed the path I wanted to take in my life. But every time he always countered with, "There's no more important work than the Lord's work," or "Choosing God's way and not our own is tough, but separation from God is even worse." But suddenly I realized there was another angle, one that might just get through to him. "Preacher, please hear me out. The day I submitted that Columbia application, I got down on my knees and I prayed God would let me get in if he wanted me to go. So it was really like a sign when I was accepted." When we Bible people ask God for signs like this all the time, we call it putting out the fleece in reference to the Old Testament story of Gideon, who asked God to make a piece of wool under his doorway dry and the ground around it wet if he should lead Israel to battle against the Midianites. At that moment, Mom stuck her grayish auburn head through the doorway. "Private party?" she asked. "Your son thinks God's sending him to Columbia. I see your sister's fingerprints all over this. She just wants to get him up there in New York City so she can fill his head with her liberal garbage." The preacher looked at me like it was time to fess up. I held my breath, hoping not to give anything away. But my dad practically had a degree in sizing people up. And Phoebe had been the one who told me about the Columbia program. But that was a fact Mom and I agreed the preacher didn't need to know. I swallowed hard. Mama walked in and grabbed the back of one of the 2 brown chairs facing the preacher's desk. She's actually changed a lot in the last few years, she said, gone back to being a good Episcopalian. "What exactly does that mean anymore, Anna? They're marrying gays now, you know. What's next, farm animals?" "Hey," she said, digging her fingers into the back of her chair, "I was raised Episcopal." "Jake, I thought you wanted to be a preacher like me and Pawpaw," he said. "The church is in your blood, son. I mean, why else would you bother learning ancient Greek?" All one-way Bible ministers study ancient Greek, which is the language of the New Testament, at seminary. A few years back, I became obsessed with the language and got the preacher to tutor me using his old textbooks. Mama was thrilled, knowing that it would help me on the SAT since loads of English words have ancient Greek roots. To be perfectly honest, though, I studied ancient Greek so I could personally interpret the more troubling New Testament passages, like the ones on sexual immorality, not because I wanted to be a preacher, but to hear my dad talk, it would be a complete disaster if our family's long line of preachers ended on his watch. What journalism's dead, son. The Tarsus paper went out of business years ago, and you saw that story a few months back about all those people getting laid off at Time magazine. I tell you, there's no future in journalism. News isn't going away, preacher, Mama said. It's just all going online. Isn't that right, Jake? Yes, ma'am, I said, and grabbed the back of the other chair in solidarity. The preacher put on his glasses and turned away and said in ancient Greek, Tu pripo me non, figin di naton, which translates to, it is impossible to escape from what is destined. A big part of learning ancient Greek is memorizing sayings from Plato, Aristotle, and Homer. It's completely dorky, but my dad and I spout them to each other all the time. But that particular quote from Sophocles' play Oedipus Rex at that particular moment was like a punch to the stomach. Heat rose in my chest so fast that my face stung, and for the first time in ages, I raised my voice at the preacher. All my friends have a say in what they're doing this summer, but once again, I can do anything I want as long as it's exactly what you tell me to do. The preacher raised a finger at me. Watch your mouth, young man. My jaw was trembling, but I wasn't scared. I was pissed. Dad, it's an important summer. Don't you remember the summer before your senior year? The preacher looked past me, reflecting on something. Yes, I went to a Pentecostal youth camp. It was probably the reason I went into the ministry. At least that's when I seriously started considering it. He clucked his tongue. Let me think about it. Dad, I have to notify Columbia by midnight tonight. If I don't go, I'll be defying God. That really scares me. The preacher looked me dead in the face, but I just stared right back, implying that he was keeping me from doing the Lord's will was a big accusation in this house, but I was determined to stand my ground for once. And what about the $5,000 tuition, he asked. Well, Aunt Phoebe offered. I'll pay for it, Mama said. What? How? My honorarium fund, of course. But Mama, that's for your new kitchen. I can spend it any way I like, she said. Henry, I want him to have this opportunity. I am not standing in his way. But Jake has already committed to leading Vacation Bible School this summer. Everyone's depending on him. She scrunched up her face like she was at her wit's end. Henry, please. Mama rarely confronted the preacher like that, and I wondered what would happen next. A stillness fell over the room as my dad stared down at his desk and pinched his nose. Had we gotten through to him? He certainly seemed to be weighing the options. Finally, he looked up at me. I don't like this. I don't like it at all. But if this is truly where you think God is leading you, then who am I to stand in his way? So you can go to New York on 2 conditions. One, we'll put out the fleece again, young man, to see if God wants you to be a preacher or a journalist. Could it really be that easy? Certainly I wanted to do the Lord's will above everything else. I've been taught to do that my entire life. Okay, Dad, what sign will we ask for? The preacher thought for a moment. Columbia must give out awards at the end of this program. Yes, sir, several. Let's pray you win one of those awards if you're meant to be a journalist. Otherwise, God wants you to be a minister. Okay, you're the preacher. I just have to work like crazy to be sure I won. 2, you'll pursue the path God reveals to you with all your heart, mind, and spirit. Of course, that would mean quitting the school paper your senior year if God points you toward the ministry. I froze. Was he serious? I had only just been elected and the entire staff was now depending on me. But I made a commitment to be editor. Just like you made a commitment to lead Vacation Bible School? Mama frowned at me and shook her head. Was I really willing to risk my high school editorship and my entire journalism career for a 6-week journalism program? Okay, I said, not feeling I had much of a choice. The preacher held out his hands for Mama and me to take. We bowed our heads in prayer. Our Heavenly Father, the preacher began, we come to you this day seeking your guidance for Jake's life.
Thank you, Chris Shirley. Thank you to all the readers tonight. Don Minkowitz, Michael Thomas Ford, Georgia Beers, Sean Stewart Ruff, Carson Tate, Gar McVeigh Russell, Ann Laughlin, Rob Osler, and again, Chris Shirley. Remember again, tribute to Nikki Giovanni on Saturday, February 1st, the next Outspoken on Wednesday, February 19th, our award ceremony. How much does it cost? Free. There you go, very good. on Thursday, April 17th at the new school on 12th Street in Manhattan. Thank you all, and thank you, Bureau of General Services, Queer Division, Greg Newton, Donnie Jokum. Really appreciate you hosting us here. Thanks.
It is.
Always a pleasure to have you, Donna.
Sorry, Greg, I'm just gonna hold
Oh, no, go for it.
thirsty.
mean, now it's been a number of years since I've been down there, so.
All right, so I'll see you soon. That's a pleasure. You, I'll see when I see you. I know you will be a stranger. Enjoy the rest of the weekend here. Tell me about the sheriff. I'm sorry. You know, I just wanted to did it. I was like, Hail Mary, kind of, you know, I just, you know, I all do this. Just they don't do it last time, right? So.
Yes, I do. I do like this one.
I'm glad to see you're moderated by water elements, so that's good. So. Yeah, there's somebody else.
quieres, no,
What did Michelle
si
say?
quieres, ¿por qué? Quizás, ¿por qué? A lo mejor.
Okay. She didn't ask you to fill out. Because we have an online form, so clearly. Okay, so she knows your bio and all that stuff, she can go over that. Okay, yeah, that's why I was poking her. Oh. Please go. We'll make it as easy as possible.
Well, so that's,
Yeah. My concern is because I looked today to order your books, they're not in the warehouse yet. And there's, they can come the day of the book release, so.
Quizás,
Yeah, but that
¿por qué?
doesn't always. Oh, right, but do we have someone at your press? Sending us that?
I'm not asking. I don't know. They bought it. That's what I know. I don't know anything about this.
Oh, okay.
You're based in Los Angeles.
Yeah, and we know Penny, we haven't talked to him in years. Okay. So then we'll reach out on Monday, because I wanna make sure the books are here, because if the income that is only distributed in the country doesn't happen until the day they come out, like, we want to have them here. Right. So they definitely release them in advance. Yes.
Well, the book they.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. But yeah, we should, I mean, that was one of the things I wanted to try and yeah. But mainly I just wanted to get, you know, photos for the flyer, and text for the event date, all that stuff. Where I can get them. Yeah. We'll make it happen, don't worry. Yeah. All right, we'll let you know if we have any issues. Bye. Hi, Reggie. Good night, Reggie. Leave the table there since we got that tomorrow and Sunday. Honey, I don't know what tomorrow is happening. Just like I ask you things and you don't know, I don't know what's happening tomorrow. Okay.